What you're about to read are 6 stories told exactly as I experienced them, in the raw, unfiltered language of someone who was there, who felt their hands go cold, who heard their own heartbeat in silence that should never have been that silent. Some of these happened to me, some happened to people I love, all of them changed us. I'm not here to sensationalize, I'm here to warn you. Because every single one of these situations started the exact same way, perfectly, completely, terrifyingly normal. Read carefully, pay attention. And the next time something feels wrong, even when everything looks right, trust that feeling with your life. Because that instinct, it has saved more lives than any weapon ever will. It was the kind of August night that tricks you. Hot enough that the air itself feels heavy, thick with cicada noise and the smell of warm asphalt, but with just enough breeze coming through the cracked window to make you think you're fine. That you're comfortable, that nothing is wrong. I was driving back from my sister's place in Knoxville, a trip I'd made at least a dozen times before on Route 30. Just me, my dog Pepper in the backseat, and a playlist I'd made 6 months ago and never changed. It was 11:47 p.m. I know because I looked at my phone right before the tire blew. The sound was like a gunshot. Pepper lurched upright, claws scrambling against the seat, and the car immediately pulled hard to the right. My hands locked on the wheel the way you're supposed to, steady, don't brake hard, guide it to the shoulder. I'd practiced this. I knew what to do. What I didn't know was that I'd blown the tire in the single worst stretch of that entire road. Mile marker 9. No gas station for 11 miles in either direction. No houses visible from the shoulder. Just trees pressing in close on both sides, and darkness between them that felt dense, alive. I pulled onto the gravel and sat there for a moment with the engine running, hazards clicking their slow orange rhythm. I checked my phone, 2 bars of signal, enough. I called roadside assistance, got put on hold, and sat listening to the automated message tell me my estimated wait time was 32 minutes. 32 minutes. I turned on my flashlight, the real one I keep in the glove compartment, not just my phone, and got out to look at the damage. The front left tire was shredded, not flat. Shredded like something had carved it. I had a spare. I've changed a tire before. I was perfectly capable of handling this. I went to the trunk to get the jack. That's when I saw the truck. It was parked maybe 100 feet behind me, completely dark, no headlights, no hazards, just sitting there. I hadn't heard it pull up. I hadn't seen headlights in the rear view. It was just there. A dark pickup, engine off, sitting at an angle on the shoulder like it had been there forever. I stood very still. Pepper was in the car, and I was grateful she hadn't barked yet. I stared at the truck. I could see the shape of someone in the driver's seat, just sitting, watching. My brain ran through explanations immediately, the way brains do when they're trying to talk fear down from the ledge. Maybe they broke down too. Maybe they pulled over to text. Maybe they're sleeping. Maybe. But none of those people sit perfectly motionless for 4 minutes without moving. Not once. I counted. I got back in my car, locked the doors. Called roadside assistance again, and this time when they answered, I told them I had an emergency situation and needed someone there in 10 minutes, or I was calling 911. Something in my voice must have conveyed what I wasn't quite saying out loud, because the dispatcher's voice shifted, professional. Careful, and she told me to stay in my vehicle and keep my doors locked. She stayed on the phone with me. 7 minutes later, the truck's engine started. No headlights. It just pulled out, slow and deliberate, and rolled past me. I crouched in my seat, face below the window line. It drove by without stopping, without accelerating, without doing anything that would look suspicious if anyone happened to be watching. That's the part that stayed with me, that calculated normalcy, the patience of someone who knew how to look like nothing. The roadside guy got there 15 minutes later. He changed my tire while I sat inside with Pepper on my lap, and every door locked, watching the road in both directions. Nothing else happened that night. But when I got home and described the truck to my husband, he went pale. There had been a series of incidents on that stretch of Route 30, women stranded at night. A pattern the local sheriff's department was aware of but hadn't publicized widely enough. I don't know what that person intended. I will never know. But I know this, I got back in that car. I stayed aware. I didn't let social politeness convince me that someone sitting in a dark truck watching me was probably fine. Never change a tire alone at night on a rural road. Drive on the rim to a lit, populated area first. The tire is replaceable. You are not. We found the rental on one of those big platforms, you know the ones. Hundreds of reviews, all 4 and 5 stars, photographs that made the little cabin in the Smoky Mountains look like something from a magazine spread. Pine walls, a stone fireplace, a porch with a hot tub overlooking the trees. My best friend Cassie and I had been planning this girl's trip for months. We arrived on a Friday evening in October, right at that perfect hour when the light goes golden through the leaves. The lockbox code worked. The cabin was exactly as pictured. We dropped our bags, opened the wine we'd packed, and spent the first hour doing exactly what we'd planned, sitting on the porch, breathing in the cold mountain air. Talking about nothing and everything. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It's embarrassing to admit because it sounds so small, but there was a smell in the master bedroom that didn't match the rest of the cabin. The rest of the place smelled like cedar and cleaning products. The master bedroom smelled faintly, very faintly, like someone had been there recently. Not dirty, just lived in. Like the ghost of another human being's presence. I mentioned it to Cassie. She shrugged and said it was probably just the previous guests. We sprayed some of the lavender room spray we found on the counter and went to sleep. I woke up at 2:14 a.m. I don't know what woke me. There was no sound I could identify, no obvious trigger. Just that full-body alert that pulls you out of sleep like a hand around your ankle. Sudden, complete, terrifying. I lay absolutely still and stared at the ceiling and waited to understand why I was awake. And then I heard it, the soft, rhythmic creak of floorboards from directly above me. The cabin was one story. There was no above me. I kept completely still. The sound moved slow, deliberate, crossing what I estimated was the length of the main room, then stopping, starting again. Like someone pacing or searching, I reached sideways and grabbed Cassie's arm in the dark. She woke instantly. Something in my grip must have communicated what my voice couldn't, and I put my mouth to her ear and whispered one word: attic. We had both read the rental listing cover to cover. There was no mention of an attic, but that sound was overhead, and it was footsteps, and I was not going to argue with what I was hearing. We got up, we grabbed our bags, our shoes, our car keys. We did not turn on any lights. We moved through the dark cabin in absolute silence, unlocked the front door and walked, did not run to the car. I did not breathe properly until we were on the main road with the headlights on and the locks engaged. We called the rental platform's emergency line from the gas station parking lot 3 miles away. They sent someone, local management, to check the property. They found evidence of a secondary access point, a pull-down attic hatch in the back closet that wasn't mentioned anywhere in the listing, wasn't visible in any photos. It had been used recently. There were blankets up there, protein bar wrappers, a phone charger plugged into an outlet someone had rigged through the attic floor. Someone had been living in that attic. For how long, we never found out. Whether they were there when we arrived, we never found out. Whether they were still there when we left, we never found out. What I do know is this: I smelled something that shouldn't have been there. My body woke me up when my conscious mind couldn't detect a threat, and I listened, both times, without requiring proof. Without waiting for certainty. If I had waited for certainty, I might not have had the option to leave. Before staying anywhere new, check every closet, every door, every space large enough to hide a person. Look for hidden cameras. Trust your nose. Your senses are gathering data your brain hasn't processed yet. I want to tell you something about myself first, because it matters for this story. I am a kind person. I was raised to be kind. I hold doors, I help with directions. I'm the person who walks someone's dropped groceries back to their car. That kindness almost killed me. It was March, early afternoon, at the parking garage attached to the mall, where I'd just spent 2 hours shopping for my nephew's birthday. 3rd floor, section C, which was one of the less populated sections because it's farthest from the elevator. I was loading my bags into the trunk, slightly annoyed at the fluorescent light above my spot that kept flickering, when a man approached from my left. He was maybe 50. Well-dressed, not expensively, but clean, respectable. He had his arm in a sling. He was carrying a single shopping bag that looked heavier than he could comfortably manage. And he had an apologetic expression that I recognized immediately as the face of someone about to ask a favor. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I had shoulder surgery last week, and I just realized I way overestimated what I could carry. Would you mind helping me get these bags to my car?" "It's just right over there." He pointed toward the far end of the row. It looked darker down there. The flickering above me suddenly felt symbolic, but I pushed that thought away. My instincts were firing, a low hum of warning I wasn't consciously registering as warning yet, and I was busy overriding them with politeness. I started to say yes. The word was forming in my mouth, and then I stopped. I don't know exactly what stopped me. It wasn't one thing. It was the way he'd appeared. I hadn't heard footsteps before he spoke. It was the fact that there was a mall entrance 20 feet away with staff and security. It was the arm in the sling that looked completely unencumbered when he shifted his weight. It was the pointing toward darkness when he could have asked me to come back toward the elevator. It was the patience in his eyes, not the desperation of someone genuinely struggling. Patience. Calculation, the look of someone who had done this before and was waiting for a response he expected. I closed my trunk. I looked at him directly. I said, "I'm so sorry, I'm actually running late. Security is right over there by the entrance. They'll be able to help you." And then I got in my car, locked the door, and drove to the exit. I sat in the exit line for 3 minutes before I could let myself shake. I reported the man to mall security from my car, description, location, what had happened. They told me carefully that they'd had other reports that day, that there had been an incident in this garage 2 weeks prior, that I should trust my instincts, trust your instincts. I've thought about this encounter hundreds of times. About the specific cocktail of factors he used, the medical accessory that invoked sympathy and implied harmlessness, the well-dressed appearance designed to seem non-threatening, the apologetic tone. The reasonable ask, the isolated destination. Every element was chosen, none of it was accidental. The kindness they're counting on isn't a character flaw in you. You are not too trusting, you are not foolish. You were targeted precisely because you are someone who helps people. That targeting is the crime, not your decency, but decency does not require you to comply. Decency does not require you to ignore your gut. You can be a kind person who also says no, turns around and gets in their locked car. That's not coldness, that's survival. You are not obligated to help strangers in isolated locations. Genuine emergencies have better solutions than asking lone individuals. Direct anyone requesting help to security, staff, or public areas. Your discomfort is data. My husband Marcus and I have been together for 11 years. We're the kind of couple that other couples describe as solid, not in the boring way, but in the way that means we've been through things and come out on the other side with our hands still locked together. The lake house weekend was supposed to be a celebration. Our anniversary, finally child-free for the first time in 3 years, with the kids at my mother-in-law's and a borrowed cabin on Lake Wiley that belonged to Marcus's coworker. The drive up was perfect. We sang along to songs we used to play in his old Civic before we had the minivan. We stopped for barbecue at a place off the highway that had 6 tables and the best pulled pork I've ever eaten. We arrived at the cabin at sunset, golden hour hitting the water through the trees, and Marcus put his arm around me on the dock and said this was exactly what we needed. He was right, we did need it. We just didn't need what came with it. The cabin was on a private road, gated community, though that's a generous term. A chain across the road with a padlock, a code we'd been given, and 4 or 5 other properties spread far apart along the lake's edge, secluded, private. The kind of isolation that sounds appealing in a real estate listing and feels different at 3 in the morning. The first night was flawless. Wine dinner we cooked together, the hot tub on the deck, the sky absolutely ridiculous with stars. We went to bed happy, we slept hard. The second day, Marcus went kayaking in the afternoon, while I read on the porch. I was deep in my book when I became aware that a car had pulled onto the gravel drive and stopped. I looked up. It was a white sedan, no markings, and the man who got out was wearing what looked like a uniform, dark pants, dark shirt, but nothing that identified which agency or company. He walked toward the cabin with the comfortable stride of someone who belonged somewhere and knew it. I stood up from my chair. "Can I help you?" I called out. He stopped, smiled. He said he was with the property management company, just doing a routine check. They liked to make sure the cabins were in good shape when guests were in residence. He had a clipboard. He was perfectly pleasant, but I had not been told to expect anyone. Marcus's coworker had not mentioned a property management visit, and I was alone. I wasn't notified about a visit, I said. "Could you wait right there while I call the owner?" Something flickered across his face, gone immediately, replaced by that pleasant smile. "Of course," he said, "no problem at all." I went inside. Locked the door, called Marcus first. He was 20 minutes out on the water and I didn't want to alarm him, but I needed him to know where I was and what was happening. Then I called Marcus's coworker, Tom, who answered on the second ring. Tom had not sent anyone to the cabin. Tom had no property management company. He handled the cabin himself. No one should have been there. When I looked out the window, the man was still standing exactly where I'd asked him to wait, still holding the clipboard. Still smiling, though he couldn't see me watching from behind the curtain. I called 911. I told them I had an unidentified individual on private property claiming to represent a company the owner didn't recognize. The dispatcher was calm and professional and told me to stay inside with the doors locked. The man waited at the end of the drive for 6 more minutes. I watched him the whole time. He never knocked again, never moved toward the house. He just waited, and then, precisely like the truck on the highway, he got back in the car and drove away, slowly, unhurried. The sheriff's deputy who came to check on us afterward couldn't tell me who the man was. The car wasn't on any camera. The community's gate camera had been angled to miss the drive entirely. There was no company, no clipboard trail, nothing. What there was, a pattern of incidents at vacation rentals in that county over the previous 18 months. Isolated properties. Couples and families, someone casing the layout, the occupants, the security situation. You did exactly right, the deputy told me. You asked for verification, you stayed behind a locked door, and you called us. Marcus made it back to the dock 20 minutes after I called him. He paddled in faster than he'd ever paddled in his life. He held me on the porch in the evening light, and we were both quiet for a long time, watching the lake. We never went back to that cabin. Some places carry a feeling after something like that, a shadow that sits in the corners and doesn't leave. Anyone claiming authority or official status can be verified before you comply with anything. Ask for credentials. Call the relevant party independently, using a number you find yourself, not one the visitor provides. Legitimate officials will always wait. The conference was in Denver, which was fine. I like Denver. I've presented at academic conferences for 15 years, and I have the routine down cold. Fly in the day before, check into the hotel, review my notes, get 8 hours of sleep, wake up present. Done. I'm not someone who has adventures. I'm someone who has itineraries. The hotel was mid-range, business class, the kind of place where every room looks like every other room, and the hallways smell like carpet cleaner and the ghost of 1,000 previous guests. I checked in at 6 p.m., took the elevator to the 8th floor, room 814, and slid my keycard into the reader. The light went green. I pushed the door open. The room was not empty. A man was sitting on the bed. He was in his 40s, stocky, fully dressed, and he looked up at me with an expression of surprise that mirrored mine exactly. For a single suspended moment, we stared at each other, two people who both understood that a fundamental error had occurred, but neither of us sure yet who'd made it. I said, "I'm so sorry, I think they gave me the wrong room." He stood up. He said, No, come in, don't worry about it. Now, I want to be very precise about what happened in my body at that moment. Because his words, on their surface, were confusing and innocuous, the kind of thing you might say to someone who bumped into you. But my nervous system processed them as a threat before my conscious mind caught up. Something about the invitation to enter a room that was clearly occupied by a stranger triggered every alarm I have. I stepped back into the hallway. I said, "I'll go sort it out at the front desk," and I let the door close between us. I went directly to the elevator. I did not wait in the hallway. At the front desk, I explained what happened. The receptionist went pale. She checked her system. She checked it again. She called her manager over. Room 814 had been checked in by the man I'd encountered. He was a legitimate guest. But the system had generated a duplicate keycard for his room when processing my check-in. A rare error, they said. An unfortunate glitch, maybe. I want to believe that explanation, and I do believe the receptionist who gave it to me. But what I can't fully shake is the "come in, don't worry about it" from a man who should have been just as alarmed as I was at finding a stranger opening his door. A man whose reaction should have been confusion or indignation, and instead was an open invitation. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe he was disoriented, maybe he was half asleep, and the words came out wrong. Maybe there was a completely innocent explanation for every syllable. But I was not willing to find out what it meant from inside his room. They moved me to the 15th floor, comped my first night, and the manager personally verified that my new keycard worked on my new room and no other room in the hotel before he handed it to me. I presented my paper the next morning. I slept fine because I double-locked the door and wedged a rubber door stop under it, something I've done in every hotel room, at every conference, in every city. Ever since I first read about it years ago. The thing about that night is that nothing definitively terrible happened. It might have been a glitch, it might have been nothing. But I made a decision in 3 seconds, to step backward instead of forward, and that decision was made by instinct, not by analysis. My body knew before my brain did. I believe that instinct saved me from something. I can't prove it. I don't need to prove it. I stepped backward. I'm here. Hotel room errors are more common than the industry admits. Always use your deadbolt and door stop. If your key opens a room that appears occupied, retreat immediately. Never accept a stranger's invitation to enter their space, regardless of context. This is not my story alone. It belongs to my brother Danny too, and to his friend Reeves, and I'm telling it with their permission because they've both said the same thing. People need to hear it. Danny and Reeves were 23 that summer. They'd just finished their last final exams of college, packed Danny's Jeep with camping gear and way too much food, and set off on the kind of road trip that only exists fully when you're young and the world still feels mostly good and mostly safe. The plan was loose: drive down through the Carolinas to Georgia, camp near the mountains, maybe hit the coast on the way back. No real itinerary, just momentum. They were 3 days in, somewhere on a 2-lane state highway in western North Carolina, when they saw her. She was standing on the shoulder of the road, not at an intersection, not near any visible structure or vehicle. Just standing there in the late afternoon light, a woman who looked to be in her late 30s, dark hair, jeans, a jacket that was too heavy for the weather. She wasn't holding a sign. She wasn't waving, she was just standing there with her arms crossed, watching the road, and she looked directly at them as they passed. Danny slowed down automatically. It's instinct, a person standing alone on a road in the middle of nowhere. You slow down, you check, you're human. She looked like she needed help, Danny told me later. But something was off about it. I couldn't put my finger on what. Reeves had the same feeling. He described it as the woman looking staged, like she was positioned rather than stranded. Her posture was too still, too deliberate for someone in genuine distress, and she hadn't made any motion toward them, no raised hand, no step toward the car. She just watched them with an expression he still can't quite describe, not desperate, expectant. They slowed to almost a stop. They looked at each other. Something passed between them, that wordless communication that happens between people who trust each other, and Danny pressed the accelerator again. They drove for about a quarter mile before Reeves looked in the side mirror. A truck had pulled out from a dirt access road, set back into the trees. It had been there the whole time, hidden from their sightline by the tree line, positioned where it couldn't be seen from the road until you were past it. The truck didn't follow them, just pulled partially out and stopped, watching, waiting to see if they'd turned around. That's when I understood what we'd almost driven into, Reeves told me. She wasn't stranded, she was bait. They drove without stopping for 40 minutes until they hit a gas station at a real crossroads with other cars and a diner attached to it. They sat in a booth and ate cheeseburgers and didn't talk much. They called me that night, called me specifically, because I'm the older sister, and apparently that's who you call when you need to tell someone you're okay, and you don't fully understand why you almost weren't. They filed a report with the county sheriff's department. I don't know what came of it. I know that stretch of highway. I know that in some counties in rural America, certain roads see patterns that local law enforcement knows about, but can't always act on without witnesses, without evidence, without someone coming forward about something specific. I know that two 23-year-old boys trusted a feeling they couldn't explain over a scenario they'd been conditioned their whole lives to respond to with kindness. I know they came home. I know that truck didn't follow them. And I know I have thought about this more times than I can count, that if they had stopped, if they had gotten out of that Jeep to help a woman who appeared to need help, the story I am telling you right now would be a different kind of story. The kind that gets told by investigators and journalists, and not by the people it happened to, because the people it happened to don't get to tell it. That's the part that lives in me. The alternate version, the story that didn't happen because two young men looked at each other and agreed, without words, that something was wrong. Trust collective instinct. When two people independently feel something is wrong, that feeling is data. Staged distress scenarios depend on your social conditioning to override your survival instincts. It is okay to not stop. 6 stories. 6 moments where the difference between safety and something unthinkable came down to a single decision: to stop or keep driving, to step backward or forward, to get in the car or stay outside it, to call for help or wait and see. None of these people were paranoid. None of them were looking for danger. They were living their ordinary lives, driving home from a sister's place, celebrating an anniversary, attending a conference, taking a road trip at 23. The danger found them. It finds all of us, eventually, in one form or another. The question is never whether something frightening will happen in your vicinity. The question is whether you'll be paying attention when it does. Your instincts are not irrational. They are the accumulated survival wisdom of a species that has been navigating danger for hundreds of thousands of years. Compressed into a signal your body sends before your conscious mind has finished processing the information. That signal arrives as a feeling, unease, discomfort. The sense that something is wrong before you can explain what, and the single most dangerous thing you can do is ignore it in the name of politeness, of not making a scene, of not wanting to be wrong. Being wrong costs you embarrassment. Ignoring that signal can cost you everything. So here is what I want you to take from these stories: not fear, but awareness; not paralysis, but attentiveness; not a refusal to help, but wisdom about when helping is safe and when it is a mechanism being used against you. Lock your car doors, trust your nose, step backward first. Call the owner before you let anyone in. Keep moving when something feels wrong. Look for the truck in the trees. Tell someone where you're going. Answer the phone when you can. Stay on roads where other people can see you. And most importantly, listen to the part of yourself that knows. It has been trying to protect you your whole life. Let it. Stay safe out there.